Hello, cuties. It is I, Mobitsby again, back at you with another video. And might I say, you look well rested today. Better than I, because I've been running on like 3 hours of sleep. Man, I'm tired. I got done with a 12-hour shift last night, and I stayed up for a few hours, did homework, and then fell asleep during homework, finished up lectures, and then went to bed for a few hours. And then I woke up. I love sleep. Sleep is not overrated. Sleep is underrated. I could sleep for days. So today I thought, what better way to talk and just mellow my brain out, because I don't know if I can function better than the bare minimum. I'm not even going to lie. So all of my efforts are probably going to go into editing later and the bare minimum into recording. Well, I'm still going to put in some effort because I'm not going to make y'all suffer like that, but I thought I might as well dive into today's topic. And what do you know? All of a sudden, there is no hole there. And that is because I finished the series last night while I was at work, and it was pretty decent. So let's talk about my favorite guys and gals. So let's dive right in, shall we? Hopefully this sounds okay. I realize my hair is probably going to be hitting this a lot, so hopefully it doesn't sound too bad. Leftover Red Bull beverage for when I tried to stay up right after my shift, but I decided I wasn't going to be so mean to myself and decided to get just a few hours of sleep first. Let's try and get through this, shall we? Because to be honest, I was always the first one to fall asleep at slumber parties because I love sleep, so bear with me here. So some of you may know the selection of very brightly colored spines. This is the Legacy of the God series, aka Psychopath. But we all have all of them. Kind of. So let's start with our first book, shall we? Our first book here, this is God of Malice. It had a chokehold on me because we got our first introduction to the world. It was super interesting. Very dark right off the bat, I will say, for the majority of all these. Check your trigger warnings. I'm not going to be responsible for any trauma that comes from it, or if it's not your cup of tea, because trust me, I understand. If this is not for you, please just move on, because it's a lot, but it had a chokehold on me, kind of. I've discovered recently I am a mood reader, and that low-key sucks, because I get series and I don't even read them right away. I probably have over 100 by now of TBR on my shelves because I just don't read them fast enough as they're coming out. I have about 5 books coming out this year, and I haven't even finished those series yet. So, God of Malice, he's our front runner. This is Killian and Glendon. Somebody tell me how to pronounce this bitch's name, because it was pissing me right the fuck off in the series, because I'm like, who? I know I'm not from Britain. I think that's where it said. It said UK. But I know well enough that they have British accents. Also, did you see that? I just saw that go, woo. Must be a ghost in here. I realize that like some names are going to be odd because I'm just not used to them. But I didn't know how to pronounce this, and I wasn't about to look it up because I'm not an audiobook person. My friend, she recommended this series. She was like, this is a need for you, because she knows how I am. As you might see, this is a very dark looking shelf because they're all dark romance. She was like, you need this in your life. And I was like, all right, bet. I like them. Don't get me wrong. We just have some strong opinions towards the back here. But we start off strong with Killian and Glenn. She's kind of the feisty one, we'll say that. And Killian's the psychopath. What more can I say? This man had a chokehold on me. I didn't know why. Because realistically, there was a quote in one of them. Her dedication in this one, accurately sums up dark romance, because people are like, if you met these people in real life, you would be scared. You would call the police. And yes, you are very correct. But that is why it is called fiction. But her dedication made me laugh. I had to share it. To the psychos, may we enjoy them in fiction, but never encounter them in real life. Valid. It took me quite a while to finish the series, just because I love series, don't get me wrong, and I love when it stays in the circle. I realize this. Don't come for me. But I did not like the Twisted series for that reason, because I got bored. I wasn't connected to any of the characters. I didn't find any of them interesting. But that was a while ago. That was when I was rediscovering my love for reading, when I only had like 10 books on my shelf, and I was just buying more and more just to bulk it up, because I do love having my own library, because then I can just finish a book and be like, what do I read next? And I can just peruse my own shelf. I love that feeling. I'll be honest, that's why I didn't like Twisted series by, I think it's Anna Huang. But I loved this one for the most part, granted. And this was all within the same set of people. Like, it wasn't introducing a new story every single time. And that was the same thing with Sarah Kate. I have her way up here. But I realized that, like, maybe that wasn't the problem. Maybe it was just like the writing. Sorry, this hair is I might have to fix that. Hold on. All right, so we're not perfect, but that's a little better. It's out of my face. Hopefully I won't be fucking with it too much anymore. So, God of Malice, I think. I have Goodreads and I have Storygraph, because I have a reading goal to meet this year. It's not going well. I'm really far behind, but your girl been kind of busy. So, I think I rated God of Malice like a 4.5 stars out of 5. It was good. It delivered on what I thought it was going to be, and I couldn't ask for more, because that's all I kind of expected out of it. We're on to God of Pain. She was cute. As you can see, this is the purple one. All of these kind of go along with the theme of the book. So red was Killian, because there's a scene in it where all of them are wearing, what's that called? Purge-like masks. They call them Halloween-esque masks and refer to them as purge masks. But I think they only did that in the first one, and then I don't think they referred to them as that in the rest of them. They all glow. And yeah, so the reason is that God of Malice was red because Killian wore a red mask. I'll explain the mask theory later. I'll retouch on that. So this was between Annie, and Creighton. Cray. And this was a cute couple, in my opinion. Annie was a mafia daughter, princess thing. So God of Pain is the only one where I think both characters are from the same school, actually. Interesting. Oh wait, no, I lied. God of War was like that, but we'll talk about her later. So God of Pain, they're both from the same school, actually. But Creighton, he's a little mysterious. Annie's having none of that, because she is just a happy ray of sunshine. I like that it didn't shy away that she was super happy, outgoing, super talkative, and just wanting to like make people happy and like feel included, feel the best that they can. It actually fit really well with this one, because Creighton was the more mysterious one. He didn't talk to people. He was kind of more closed off, wouldn't give her the time of day, but she melted his cold heart. I'd say this is like top 3 out of 6, quite honestly. Next, we're on to God of Wrath. This was between Jeremy and Cece. I thought it was cute. I feel like I cannot give it the best judgment, to be honest, because I started it before I started a class for work, and I finished it after I was done with the class for work. So this actually took me the longest book out of all of them to finish, because it took me like a month. And it's because I just got so busy that I wasn't able to focus on anything but that, because I also was doing schooling for like a degree. That one took me the longest for sure. And so I feel like it was more drawn out, or like wasn't fast paced enough. But I asked my friend for her advice, and she was like, no, I thought it was great paced actually out of all of them. It was like, it might just be because you took such a long break. And I was like, valid. I can totally see that. I liked their dynamic. It was a little odd. There were some moments where I was like, don't know how I feel about that. Because it felt like a very strained relationship. In the end, it worked out, but it was kind of just odd. I liked that he was more caring. He was able to pick up on certain cues from her, because that is one thing I will have to admit, that they did not shy away from certain mental illnesses. Granted, I know there is some flack with it for not being super accurate representation wise, and I cannot be the judge of that because I did not have the certain issues that they did have in this book, in these books, plural. Even if it's not the best representation, I like that it was at least talked about and included as a character's, part of their personality. I hate to say it like that, but I like that they didn't shy away from it, and they also didn't make it seem as much of a burden, like to those around them. Because if they were struggling, they're just like, you just need help. Like, you can always reach out for help. It's not a big deal. And I kind of like that, because I feel like a lot of people that have mental illness, they don't, I mean, I'm a little mentally ill. I don't like reaching out to help because I don't like being a burden. And that was one of the character's issues, is that she was like, I do struggle and I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to have to ask people and make them kind of bored with me. I don't want to be the one that's always bringing up problems. And I like that, because true shit. We are on to God of Ruin. This was between Landon and Mia. Let's address the elephant in the room. I don't like Landon. He's higher up on my list now that I've read the book, but up until this point, I hated the guy. I loved Mia. She was the female in this book. Landon was the male, obviously. I loved Mia. I really did, because she was such a spitfire. She was so spunky. I also love that they brought in the fact that she was a mute. So that kind of added another element into the story of being like, she has to find other ways to communicate. I found that awesome. And that there was kind of attention brought to the fact that, like, she had to use sign language. She could read lips. Like, she wasn't deaf. She just had issues speaking. And I like that they brought in that kind of diversity into it. And not even the fact that she was deaf, but that she was mute for reasons. And I like that they didn't shy away from that it wasn't like such a like bad thing. I like that they just kind of rolled with it, that people were like, oh, okay, she just has to use sign language or type on her phone. Like, no one really batted an eye. And I kind of like that, because it's not like people look at people like that any different. If you have to use a different way to communicate, I don't see how that's any different than like knowing Spanish or Japanese or whatever language you freely want to speak. It's just something that you have to work through and find different ways to communicate. And I like that they included that, because I don't think I've ever read a book that had someone that used sign language. So I will say it did get a little confusing sometimes, because you kind of get confused of when sign language is happening, because they do mention it every so often in between the story. So if it's like a long dialogue, it'll start with saying that it was sign language. They'll communicate for a bit, and then they'll mention that it was sign language again, but then how she's like expressing, because sometimes emotion is super important with how you portray. Because I did take sign language for 1 year. I'm not a pro by any means, but that was something they did stress, was that your facial expressions and how you reacted bodily wise, it kind of proved the point, or expressed more thoroughly what the emotion was behind that sentence. So if you like furrow your eyebrows, it might be more serious. If you're like super energetic, it's something exciting. So I like that they brought that awareness. I really liked it. I ended up liking Landon a lot more towards the end. I hated him at first, but I did end up liking him more towards the end. He had his moments. I don't know enough about it, but he's different. And I absolutely hated that he caused drama for like no reason all the time. Drama alert, Keemstar. Someone alert him, because this man was always causing drama just for the hell of it. I want a small drum roll. I want a moment before the standing ovation. God of Fury. This, by far, was the best one out of the whole series. I am not a male. This was between, I'm pretty sure it's Nikolai. It's a Russian name. Between Nikolai and Brandon. And once again, I'll have to pull it up a family tree later of like how these people are related, because you might notice that like Lyndon kind of sounds similar to Brandon, and you'd be right. But God of Fury was between Nikolai and Brandon, and I didn't know how I was going to feel about that at first, because I just didn't know if I'd like that dynamic because of the fact that like I'm not a male. I can't relate to them as much. But oh my God, it had me sobbing at the end. I will not lie. I full down broke into tears at the end of this book because, oh my God, the build up. It just, out of all of them, that one took the cake. I will say that one was the best out of all of them. That one takes my number one because it just had such an interesting dynamic. It was definitely enemies to lovers. Brandon hated Nikolai because that man was a psycho. He was crazy. But we like a little crazy around here. But I just like that it brought something different. I like that it was a same-sex couple, really highlighting the fact that like no one's going to treat you, at least a decent human being is not going to treat you differently because you like the same sex. That's not, no. People, at least the good kind of people, are not going to treat you any differently. Love who you love. And quite honestly, if you're focused on other people's attractions, you need to get a life because that's none of your business. Why should you care? That is their life, not yours. Just move on. Let them be happy. Let them love who they love. No one's stopping you. Why are you stopping them? I digress. I thought it brought a lot of new elements that the other ones didn't. I thought it was so beautifully written. I feel like a lot of people give this series a lot of flack, especially surrounding the author. So I'm not going to negate that because I don't know enough about the drama between that. I honestly don't follow that kind of stuff really closely. So anyway, God of Fury, 5 out of 5. Loved it. I will say if you're into that kind of thing or you're kind of on the fence, but you really want something that like will move you in the end, I would say God of Fury. Obviously, check your trigger warnings. Once again, this whole series is a dark romance series. Don't come for me if you don't check your trigger warnings, because I'm not going to be responsible because you didn't read ahead. I should also preface, I go into all of these blind. I don't read the synopsis on the backs. I only did for God of Malice just to make sure that this was kind of the concept that I'd enjoy, but my friend loved them so much, so I wasn't going to be surprised that I loved them too. My friend recommended these, and we're kind of on the same avenue when it comes to books. For the most part, there are a few that she's like not super digging, at least that I know of. But this is something that we definitely agreed upon. And she was like, dude, I'm telling you, your brain's going to be flipped. You're not going to, you say that now that you might not like this book as much as you think, but you're going to love it. And it's probably going to be top. And I was like, are we sure about that? And what do you know? It was just, it really was the best out of all of them. Top one, I will say. And last, and quite honestly least, I hate to say it, God of War. Crickets. I will say, I was not expecting that to be the final couple. The final couple was between Ava and Eli, and I wasn't a huge fan. Regardless, I already didn't like Ava that much. Eli was barely touched on. I didn't think there's a whole lot to it because both of these characters were like the least involved, I feel like, out of all of the books. I feel like they didn't get as much screen time, if you will. If we were talking about a movie, they didn't get like any screen time until this last book. All of the other books, so God of Malice through God of Fury, was within like the same time frame. It was when they were all at uni and they were all in school. And God of War starts that way. It starts with them in school. And I'm not going to spoil too much because it's within the first like 3 chapters, but then it jumps to 2 years ahead. And you're like, okay, cool. Because and that was kind of the whole point of the book. It just felt weirdly thrown together. I didn't quite like how it's kind of just like an afterthought. I don't know if it was meant, if like that was planned, or if there was just such a demand for it to be a 6-book series instead of 5. I don't know any of that because I wasn't around when it was first released and like put out there. But it just kind of felt like the forgotten sibling. It felt like the middle child, even though it's the very last book. Because it felt very lackluster. With it being the last one, I had a lot of hype for it. I was like, I don't like Ava or Eli that much. I don't know much about them, but surely it must be pretty decent because it's the last book of the series, right? No, it was kind of a letdown. I'm not even gonna lie, because I don't know what I was expecting out of that book, but that wasn't it. I didn't it wasn't as enjoyable as a read to me. And that was kind of the sucky thing because I kept giving it hope. Like, I was like, maybe it gets better. Maybe it gets better. 300 pages in, and I'm like, it's not getting better. And that's kind of the shitty thing. Surely it must get better, but it just didn't. At least not to me. Maybe this is someone else's cup of tea, but it definitely it wasn't mine. And that's no tea, no shade, all lemonade to this author, because clearly she's on my shelf. She's going to stay, even the problem child that is God of War, because I like having a whole set of a series, even if I wasn't like a big fan of one book. Let's delve into family trees now, shall we? So I'm going to pop up the family tree that's presented in the front of all of the books. Okay, cool. I'm going to keep that up there because off the top of my head, I don't have it memorized. I have a decent understanding. So as you can see, Royal Elite, and I like how I'm pointing behind the picture. On top we have Royal Elite, and on the bottom is the King's U. So these are the 2 rivaling colleges. The top school is the UK school, and the bottom is like the American school on UK soil. They're beefing hard throughout the whole book. They hate each other. I will say, for the American one, they brought up that there was like 2 rivalries, like 2 rival gangs. In addition, gangs, I put gangs loosely. There was a lot of beef between these 2 rival groups at the American school, as well as having beef with the UK school, but they didn't touch on the beef with the American schools like at all. They just kept throwing it out there like, oh, they hate each other. And it's like, okay, what's this mysterious other group? They don't talk about it other than they be plotting and they be doing stuff. So as you can see, Landon, Brandon, and Glendon, or Lan, Bran, and Glenn, I've never said their names consistently like in one row before. It's kind of wild. So they're all related. They all end up in books. Brandon is God of Fury, Landon is God of Ruin, and then Glenn is God of Malice. She kicks off the whole series. And then on the other side, their cousins is Eli and Creighton. So for the 3 siblings, Lan, Bran, and Glenn, you have Eli and Cray. And it kind of gets fuzzy. I always forgot that Eli was their cousin because once again, barely brought up. He's like the forgotten cousin. Then as a separate family, we have Cicely. She is part of her own little group. She's not related to any of them. And then we have Remington. He's just a side character. He's not part of the books in a relationship aspect. I mean, he kind of is further down the road. I won't go too much into depth with that, but he's like the comedic relief of the book. And we like his lordship. He was annoying, but you can't fault him for living up to his title. Thank you, your lordship, for always bringing in the comedic relief when it was much needed. And below, we also have Ava and Ari. It was Ariella, so I said Ari, but I was like, I think it's supposed to be Ari, so Ariella. But Ava, god of war, she has a sister. She's important, but I feel like she was only mentioned in God of War. I don't remember her ever being mentioned in the rest of them, quite honestly. And then we move down a peg to not at all. I like all the people from the King's U. Can't say the same for Royal Elite. Ooh, ooh. So we have Gareth and Killian. We did have a book on Gareth. And I actually found him very interesting. So, but I think I lied. I think the newest book that just came out was Gareth. I think I stand corrected. And then we have Killian with Glenn. So obviously there was already beef happening there because he was American and she was UK. Anyway, and then we go over, but we have Nikolai, Mia, and Maya. So Nikolai is in God of Fury. Oh, I should have said Brandon's God of Fury, Landon's God of Ruin. And Mia was also God of Ruin. Maya was Mia's twin sister. They're identical. And fun fact, Landon and Brandon, also identical. So we have 2 sets of identical twins. We got beef with Maya. Not trying to spoil, but like that's all I'll say. And then lastly, in a separate category, we have Jeremy and Annika. Annie and Jeremy are also technically Russian royalty / mafia royalty, and so is Nikolai, Mia, and Maya. They're all part of that. Before I go, I will read you the kind of prompts on the top of the books, because a lot of times with like romance books, not all the time, but a decent amount, a little blurb at the top of the book or bottom, and it kind of gives you an idea of what you're getting into right off the bat without you having to read the back. You just see it at the top and you're like, oh, okay, I kind of know what I'm getting myself into trope-wise, because I feel like that's also a very important thing. If you get into a book not realizing what trope it is or what you're supposed to be reading, if you think it's one thing and then it's a different thing, you're going to be very thrown for a loop and you're not going to love it. And you're going to be like, I liked my idea of what I was supposed to be reading better. So I feel like that's kind of what it comes down to. So I'm just going to go through all of them. So I will say though, these are all standalones. So if you want to just pick and choose what you do want to read, that's fine. They're all written that way. So you're not going to be missing a whole lot if you read them out of order. But I do highly recommend you do read them in order, because sometimes they do overlap and you might get spoilers of what happens in the previous books. Like it will tell you what happened in the previous book, especially if they're overlapping in the time frame that the book is supposed to be happening. So keep that in mind. If you don't like spoilers, period, read them in order for sure. If you don't mind a little bit of hints here and there or how things end up, then you can read them out of order. I would definitely say if you want to read the whole thing and you do want to end up reading God of War, you absolutely have to read that one last, because it does tell you everything that happens ending wise with the rest of them. It does not leave anything to the imagination. It tells you how everything ends up. So I think for your sake, For your daughter's sake.
Now, for your customer's sake, for your daughter's sake, you might
read God of War last. But let's get into the blurbs. So we have God of Malice. I'll remind you once more while I go through all of these what the couples are. Killian and Glyn. And it's, I caught the attention of a monster. And a devilish monster he is. Then we have God of Pain. The princess is taken by the God of Pain. I really like this one. I'd say it'd have to go God of Fury, God of Pain, God of Malice. Hands down. God of Wrath. I'm trapped by the devil. Devilish he was. God of Ruin. He'll ruin me. I'll destroy him. I like me a little Spitfire. I will say I loved Mia. She was awesome. God of Fury. I'm taken by a beautiful nightmare. And lastly, oh, there goes my shelf. And lastly, God of War. The man I hate is my husband. Thank you, Ava, for contributing absolutely nothing. As you can see, they are very thick books. Now that they're not on my shelf, you can see that they are very thick. I also have the sprayed edges, so they look so nice. But they are very thick. I'm definitely a speed reader. I blow through books very quickly, especially if I love them a lot. I finished these within 3 months because I started reading these after New Year's. Give yourself some grace. I feel like certain books, if you do decide to end up reading dark romance books, or if you're new or if you're seasoned, I feel like it's always a good reminder. Your mental health matters. Take care of yourself. Don't force yourself to read stuff just because you want to see how stuff ends. If you're reading this series and one of the books really just is not for you, it touches stuff that you do not want to touch, do not read it. Don't subject yourself to that. Take care of yourself. You don't have to. This doesn't matter. You matter. You matter. So, I will say, if you're someone that's very seasoned, like I, or you're just very dumb like I will not say dumb, but I am dumb. Because I go into all my books that are dark romance, I go into them blind for the most part, trigger warning wise. If you're someone that needs those trigger warnings, use them. No one's shaming you for it. I like to be surprised. I like to see what happens and just see where we go. But if you do, read your trigger warnings. I highly recommend them, especially if you're a little bit newer to dark romance, because there is some questionable stuff in here. I will say that. I'd say, just to cover my own ass, if you're under the age of 18 and you somehow stumble across this video, ask your parents first, because I'm not going to be responsible for that. So I will say, if you enjoyed this video and this big old deep dive, please drop a like, maybe comment something, tell me if you've read them, tell me if you like them, do a little subscribe if you feel like you want to. We have a lot of fun here. We're just starting out, but I'll be back next week with another video. I think I might do something a little more lighthearted, not book related wise, but hopefully I'll have a little more energy. And it'll be fun. I think we might play a game next week. So stick around for that, and I'll see y'all later. Keep that heart ticking, and have a good rest of your day, guys. Bye! Hi, it's me again. I just finished recording, and I kind of forgot. I thought it'd be fun to do a little list of what I like the most. Biased? Maybe. So I will pop up my favorite books. In what order? We have God of Fury, top 1. She reigns supreme. She gets the crown. She have the best book. Next, God of Pain. We liked her. She was great. She was funky fresh. Next, we have God of Malice. You were the start of the book. You started us off strong. Best out of the series, though? You were mid. Middle of the pyramid. Next, we have God of Wrath. You were good. I liked the concept. I liked the dynamic. Was it the best? We're starting to dip a little bit. But I liked you. You kept it funky fresh. But man, you weren't great. You were mid also. A little less actually. Keep that in mind. Next, God of Ruin. Makes me sad. Because I hate Landon. He grew on me, don't get me wrong, but I hate him. But I loved Mia. Mia was awesome. She was great. Nothing could hold her down. And that's why I'm kind of sad to put her so far down. She don't deserve that. All 5 books I loved. And God of War. In the dirt. And that's all I'll say. Because I honestly don't think God of War fits with the rest of them. Do better. Do better. All right, bye.